There's a particular kind of silence you feel right before everything blows up, when the world holds its breath and just waits. Most people picture that moment as the hush before an explosion. But for me, that morning standing on my front porch, it was the silence right before a 6-cylinder diesel roared awake, rattling so hard it probably loosened my neighbor's dental work. That's how my Saturday started. Me clutching a sad, lukewarm beer, the sun barely up, watching a 40-ton fire engine squat across my lawn, soaking everything in exhaust and the sharp scent of pine and, if I'm honest, a touch of spite. To my left, about 50 feet away, Mrs. Higgins was vibrating not just with anger, but literally thanks to the fire truck's idling engine shaking her bones. She stood there all 5'0" of her armored, in a floral print muumuu that looked like a wild garden gone rogue and a sun visor determined to bisect her face. Her mouth flapped open and shut silent, her fury drowned by the relentless chug-chug-chug of the pump intake. It was like watching a silent film about a banshee, except the captions were all in engine noise. I took another sip of a beer, warm, gross, but at that point it was just a prop. I had to look casual, like a man who hadn't just staged a small-scale natural disaster to make a point. That's when Chief Miller walked up my driveway, helmet, name tag, the whole "I eat concrete for breakfast" vibe. He looked me up and down then, over at Mrs. Higgins, who by now was jabbing a finger skyward, probably trying to reach upper management of the universe. "You, Mike," the chief grunted. "That's me," I said, raising my bottle like it was a morning toast. "Beautiful day for a drill." "We appreciate the donation," he replied, and I swear his smile was half amusement, half warning. "Usually got to drive out to the creek for this. This is convenient." "Happy to help the community," I said, real neighborly. "Everything set. Ready to draft," he confirmed. All the hoses were in the big suction line snaked into my pool. I glanced at Mrs. Higgins. She'd stopped yelling now, holding up her phone vertical video, surely live streaming my crimes to her 3 Facebook friends. I leaned in and told the chief, "Watch the wind, though. It's picking up." He squinted toward the prize-winning begonia bed running parallel to the discharge hose. "We'll do our best, son," he said, "but nature's unpredictable. Ain't that the truth?" But to get why the fire department was about to unleash the wrath of Poseidon onto a flowerbed owned by a 60-year-old gardening warrior, you gotta rewind. 3 months, back to when I still thought a backyard swimming pool was just a hole full of fun, not the trigger for suburban warfare. I'd bought the house in Oak Creek for the backyard, a flat, perfect rectangle screaming potential. I'm a logistics guy. My whole life is boxes and columns, moving parts. I wanted curves, water, a pool where I could float on a vinyl raft and forget about spreadsheets for once. I scraped and saved, ate enough instant noodles to qualify for citizenship in Japan, drove a car that sounded like cutlery in a blender, and finally hired Big Tony and his crew to build my little slice of paradise. And that, of course, was when I met Mrs. Higgins. The first day I felt her before I saw her. Some primal I'm being watched, feeling like a gazelle with a lion behind it. See, our fence was 6 feet high, but her yard sat a few inches higher. So if she stood on tiptoe or on her tactical step stool, which I later learned about her glasses would just poke up over the slats, beady little eyes, submarine periscope style, judging everything. First words out of her mouth: "Not? Hi, not welcome. Just, do you have a permit for that machinery?" No smile, no small talk, just business. "I do," I said. "It's taped to the window, city approved." She sniffed. "The vibration is disturbing my soil compaction. I grow competitive begonias. Begonias require stability." She went on about root collapse attorneys, and by the time she sank back behind the fence, I should have known, should have filled in the hole, sold the house, maybe built a bunker instead. But I wanted that pool. Construction took months, mostly because Mrs. Higgins called the police on my contractors 4 separate times. Noise, dust, illegal parking, and best of all, lewd conduct because a worker took his shirt off in the heat. But we finished. And my pool glorious. Blue as a Caribbean postcard. Quiet, perfect, worth every sleepless night. First Saturday, I'm floating on a giant pizza slice, cold beer in hand, the kind of relaxation you don't even believe exists anymore. That's when her shadow loomed over the fence again. Mrs. Higgins, armed with a device that looked like a Geiger counter. "Michael," she said, "never, Mike, I'm measuring the humidity index." "Okay," I replied, half asleep. Since you filled that reservoir, she practically spit the word. "The local humidity in my microclimate is up 4%. My begonias are at risk of fungal rot. And the glare, don't get me started on the glare. I have to wear sunglasses to eat toast. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Not draining my $50,000 pool because of toast glare, Mrs. Higgins. Have a nice day. I thought that'd be it. Just another chapter in the book of cranky neighbors I ignore. But nope. She was just getting started. A week later, I get a letter from the city about mosquito control. She'd reported my pool as a West Nile breeding ground, cost me $150 for an inspector who found the water cleaner than his own. Days later, a drone buzzed my yard. Hers naturally a surveillance instrument for code violations, she claimed. I called the cops. The dispatcher told me, exhausted. That's a civil matter, sir. Civil, of course. But the last straw was her sonic warfare. One of those teenager repellent speakers aimed straight at my pool, blasting high-pitched screeches until my friends and I had to pack it in. That was her warning shot. The kill shot came when I found a neon orange city sticker on my door, cease and desist. According to her complaint and her evidence, my pool was leaking into her precious begonias. I had 48 hours to drain the whole thing or the city would fine me $500 a day. Panicking, I called code enforcement. Poor Gary. The inspector practically apologized, explained she'd poured water in her own garden, photographed it, claimed it was seeping from my side, and escalated the report to the EPA. If we don't inspect, she'll sue the city. Gotta drain it, Mike. Big Tony's advice was no comfort. If you drain it in this heat, that liner's toast. But I had no choice. Discharge the water over a permeable surface, Tony warned. Don't dump it in the street or the sewer, or the storm drain city will fine you for that, too. I'd have to flood my own yard, kill my grass, maybe my foundation. Mrs. Higgins, watching me from her side, just smiled. If one drop of that chlorinated poison touches my flower bed, I'll have the EPA here so fast your head'll spin. I was trapped until after a few beers at O'Malley's, the universe tossed me a lifeline. The news was talking about how the fire department was desperate for water to run training drills. Drafting, they called it pulling water from a source to test the big hoses. Light bulb moment. I had water. They needed water. We could help each other out. And maybe, just maybe, help Mrs. Higgins' begonias face the raw power of a municipal fire truck. I called the department. Got 25,000 gallons here, clean, easy access, need it gone by Sunday. Want to use it for a drafting drill? Chief Miller didn't ask many questions. Saturday, 7 a.m., they showed up with 3 rookies and enough hose to reenact Noah's flood, which is how we got back to that morning. And Mrs. Higgins soaked, shrieking, her prized garden flattened under a fog of pressurized water. The rookies cheered. Mrs. Higgins ran for cover, slipped in the mud she'd dug up for her evidence. 5 minutes later, the police rolled up Officer Davis looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Mrs. Higgins performed her one-woman opera, accusing me of weaponizing the fire department, chemical warfare, the works. Davis just sighed. This is a civil matter, ma'am. The magic words. Mrs. Higgins sputtered, threatened to call the mayor, the governor, probably the president. I just shrugged. You might want to check your basement with all that water on your side. You know, root rot. She froze, eyes wide, then waddled back to her house. Monday, Gary came to inspect. He walked the empty pool, checked every inch, no cracks, no leaks, pristine. Atmospheric anomaly got her garden, I joked. Gary snorted, signed me off. I could refill. But at 5 gallons a minute from my hose, it'd take a week. By then the liner would be ruined. Big Tony suggested the city hydrant meter, legal fast, much cheaper than water trucks. I rented the meter, hooked it to the hydrant, filled up in 6 hours. Mrs. Higgins came out mourning her begonias, furious that I'd be bringing back the glare. I told her city said it was fine. When she tried to demand compensation for her flowers, I suggested we call it even, unless she wanted a harassment lawsuit for her false complaint. That shut her up. By Wednesday, my pool was sparkling. Sun, peace, the hum of the pump, and only cacti growing on Mrs. Higgins' side, a fitting tribute to her personality. She came out once more, just tea in hand, softer than before. I suppose if the city approves, they do, she mumbled. She said she'd switch to succulents, less water, less trouble. Her fight was gone. I lay on my pizza raft, counting up the costs, the water, the hassle, the lessons learned. Could have been thousands in fines or more in therapy if I'd let her win. Instead, I watched the sky let the water rock me gently, and thought about how sometimes karma shows up dressed as a fire chief, armed with a deck gun. Here's the thing about neighbors, about battles, about justice. You can play by the rules, follow every ordinance, and still end up in the crosshairs of someone with too much time and not enough joy. But sometimes if you keep your cool and look for a loophole, you might just get the last laugh, wet begonias, empty pool and all. But I have to wonder, where's the line between defending your peace and escalating a neighbor war? Was I right to use the system against her? Or did I just sink to her level, one waterlogged garden at a time? What would you have done? Tell me below, whose side are you on? And if you've ever fought your own suburban battle, I want to hear your story. Because sometimes justice isn't blind, it just needs a really, really big hose.